Good evening. In the news tonight, a Vincennes man is arrested in connection with this weekend's fatal police crash. Reaction continues to President Barack Obama's proposal to cut the nation's deficit. And in sports, the Vincennes School Corporation plans to honor some former Lincoln High School athletes. News Center 22 starts now.
Local news, weather, and sports. Produced through the combined efforts of the students, staff, and faculty of Vincennes University's electronic media program, this is News Center 22.
A Vincennes man has been arrested in a connection to this weekend's fatal police crash. Good evening for News Center 22. I'm Mitch Columbi. Indiana State Police say 35-year-old Jeremy Leidy was arrested Monday and charged with resisting law enforcement with a vehicle after a Vincennes police officer noticed his red Chevrolet Beretta parked in a driveway. Leidy's vehicle matched the description of a car that was being pursued by Knox County Sheriff's Deputy John Fuller just before Fuller's squad car was involved in a fatal crash that killed 4-year-old Jordan Walls of Bicknell. State police say Leidy was driving the 1996 Beretta when Fuller attempted to stop the vehicle and the chase ensued. According to reports, Fuller had turned on his squad car's emergency lights and sirens and drove into an intersection without stopping at a stop sign, hitting the left rear of a van. Police say Walls was unrestrained in the rear of the van and died from head injuries from Saturday's crash. 34-year-old Michael Kirby of Bicknell was taken to an Evansville hospital with serious injuries. Another child, the van's driver, and the sheriff's deputy were taken to Good Samaritan Hospital for treatment. After 16 years of steady decline, it appears the Vincennes School Corporation's enrollment is showing a bit of an upswing. Superintendent Tom Nante told members of the Vincennes School Board last night that he hopes that trend continues. Nante believes the new Clark Middle School, along with the investment in technology in grades K through 12, has helped to maintain and draw students back to the school corporation. Nante reported enrollment at Lincoln High School is up by 37 students. That number is bolstered by a large incoming freshman class. Clark Middle School is down 21 students, but Nante attributes that to the 8th grade class moving on to the high school and 216 students coming to Clark from the elementary schools. Meanwhile, the Vincennes School Board adopted its 2012 budget during last night's meeting. The $28 million spending plan includes $17 million in the general fund budget. Assistant Superintendent Greg Parsley says they probably won't know what the final budget numbers will look like until after the Department of Local Government Finance has had a chance to crunch the numbers. Parsley also reported that the assessed valuation is looking better for Vincennes. In speaking with the officials in the county auditor and assessor's office last week, Parsley says nearly $11 million in property has been added back to the city's tax rolls. He says they probably won't have a clear picture of what that means for the school corporation for a couple of years. The state is asking families of those killed or injured in a deadly stage collapse at the Indiana State Fair to complete a new customized claim form by November 1st so the state can expedite settlements. The Attorney General's office said Monday the new form is available online at the agency's website and by calling 1-800-760-4616. The form allows victims to apply for payments from the Indiana Tort Claim Fund. As of Monday, the agency said 21 claims have been filed against the $5 million fund. The agency says claims can still be filed after November 1st, but the funds will likely be exhausted. A Libertarian has entered next year's Senate race. Andrew Horning hopes to unseat longtime U.S. Senator Richard Lugar, who is seeking a 7th term in the Senate. Indiana State Treasurer Richard Murdoch is challenging Lugar for the GOP nomination. Representative Joe Donnelly is running for the Democratic Party. Horning was the Libertarian candidate for governor in 2000 and 2008 when he received about 2% of the vote. Purdue University researchers have found a new way to pinpoint cancer cells. Purdue professor of chemistry Dr. Philip Stewart Lau says the technique takes advantage of cancer cells' appetite for folic acid. The vitamin is combined with a fluorescent dye to help identify ovarian cancer cells during surgery. The procedure allows surgeons to see malignant cells 30 times smaller than what was previously possible. The Mayo Clinic in the U.S. will start to schedule this type of surgery next month. Holiday World and Splash and Safari is celebrating 4 Golden Ticket Awards. For the 5th year in a row, the park's Voyage roller coaster was named the #1 wooden roller coaster on the planet. The park's Wildebeest water coaster was named the world's #1 water park ride for the 2nd year in a row. Holiday World and Splash and Safari was also named the cleanest park for the 12th consecutive year. The awards are handed out by Amusement Today magazine based on results of its annual survey. Still to come on News Center 22, Republican leaders are speaking out against the president's proposal to cut the nation's deficit. And after 18 years, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is lifted from the U.S. military. We'll explain more when we come back.
Coming up this week on WVUT's 22 magazine, fundraising for this year's United Way campaign is underway. Executive Director Bob Borowski will be in the studio to discuss where the money goes and services they provide. Then in our second segment, Pat Hutchinson with Vincent's Education Foundation talks about the group's mission and a pair of fundraising events coming up later this month. That's the next time on 22 magazine, Saturday night at 7:30 on WVUT.
This season on Ask This Old House, we're getting a ton of home improvement questions.
We could put a closet door right here.
It's a freezing room. We're lucky if it gets to about 64 degrees in here.
We'll go anywhere to tackle all sorts of projects.
A doorbell, awesome.
Master bath. I'll send Richard over. See you guys.
Sounds good, thanks. My pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Where are the margaritas?
Republicans are unleashing fierce backlash against the president's plan to raise taxes on the very rich. The tax hike on millionaires is part of Mr. Obama's deficit reduction plan. House Speaker John Boehner used particularly colorful language to describe it. Kate Baldwin has the details.
As quickly as the president laid out his proposal for reducing the country's deficits, congressional Republicans were lining up to knock it down.
I understand that it's easy to go out there and talk about taxing billionaires. Listen, if they want to pay more, there's a special provision in the tax code for them to write a check to the federal government.
Speaking to business leaders in Cincinnati, House Speaker John Boehner slammed the president's call for the so-called super committee to approve $1.5 trillion in tax increases.
At a time when it's spending that's out of control, giving the federal government more money would be like giving a cocaine addict, all right, more cocaine. We've got to get spending under control. And the way to raise revenues is to get our economy moving again and get more Americans off of unemployment, off of food stamps, and back doing real work.
Adding to the GOP pushback, statement after statement Monday from House and Senate Republicans criticizing the president's pitch. The top Republican in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, saying, quote, veto threats, a massive tax hike, phantom savings, and punting on entitlement reform is not a recipe for economic or job growth or even meaningful deficit reduction. But the president's fellow Democrats were supportive.
It's a concrete strategy to cut the deficit by more than $4 trillion over the next decade and to do it fairly.
President Obama seemed to anticipate the sharp criticism from the Republican side of the aisle, turning his focus directly on the House Speaker, who just days earlier made clear tax hikes are still not an option.
So the Speaker says we can't have it my way or the highway, and then basically says my way or the highway. That's not smart. It's not right.
Now it seems both men, President Obama and House Speaker John Boehner, have drawn a line in the sand at the same time, calling on the other to not do exactly that. The war of words will no doubt continue, but the real pressure is now on the super committee. The members have to come up with a deficit reduction plan that can win a majority support in the committee as well as in the Congress, and do it very soon. If this debate is any signal, that job just got a little harder. Kate Baldwin, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Today will mark the end of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. President Barack Obama signed a repeal of the law in December of last year, but the Pentagon held off on officially doing away with it until new rules and new training were put in place. For 18 years, the law banned gays and lesbians from serving openly in the military. The advocacy group Service Members Legal Defense Network estimates more than 14,000 people were kicked out of the military because of the law. Many of them are already looking to re-enlist. Forget paying at the pump. At least you don't have to pay to stow luggage in your car. A new USA Today survey of 13 U.S. airlines found some of them are charging hundreds of dollars for baggage fees on some flights. The survey found Continental Airlines charging a whopping $400 for some overweight checked bags on most international flights. And the survey found a similar situation over at American Airlines, which now charges $450 for some overweight bags on Asian flights. The airlines say these types of fees help keep base ticket fares down and discourage people from checking heavy bags. Forget supersizing. It seems all about today about downsizing, and Coca-Cola is jumping on the tiny bandwagon. The Wall Street Journal reports the beverage maker is trying to lure in new customers and appeal to penny-pinching health-conscious ones by adding a 12.5-ounce bottle for 89 cents to its repertoire. It also is cutting the price of its 8-pack of 7.5-ounce cans. Pepsi also has smaller-sized bottles of soda for sale. Of course, as you might realize, the smaller sizes may cost less, but overall you're paying more per ounce. More people died in 2009 from drug overdoses than in car accidents. That's coming from a preliminary report from the Centers for Disease Control. The numbers are the latest data the CDC has on causes of death in the U.S. The report shows just over 36,000 people died in 2009 in car accidents, while more than 37,000 died from accidental drug overdoses. The LA Times, which did an analysis of the report, found Vicodin and Oxycontin were among the most commonly abused drugs. Are you ready for some football? As high school, college, and professional teams begin to hit the fields this fall, a lot of attention is being placed on their safety, especially when it comes to the subject of concussions. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, each year U.S. emergency departments treat an estimated 135 sports and recreation-related traumatic brain injuries, including concussions among children 5 to 18. Now, scientists believe some people may be more susceptible to concussions than others. Here's Susan Hendricks with today's Health Minute.
Athletes can take a pounding, and all that abuse can lead to some tough injuries. In fact, over the past few years, physicians have been learning more about the long-term effects of playing sports, especially when it comes to concussions.
What that does to the brain, it can cause cells or tissue to strain or stretch. That can result in cell dysfunction.
Ryan Tierney is a researcher with Temple University. He's been investigating whether some athletes are more prone to developing concussions than others. Tierney tested more than 200 college football and soccer players to see if they had a specific variation of a certain gene that helps make proteins that repair neurons in the brain when they are damaged. Out of 200, 9 of those athletes had suffered multiple concussions. 8 of those had the same variation of the gene.
Now, this variation is normal throughout the population, okay, but in people who are going to put themselves in an environment where they're going to receive repetitive head impacts, it becomes a little more important.
Although more research is needed, Tierney believes if concussions are genetic, scientists could ultimately come up with a saliva test that could alert athletes if they are prone to concussions. It would also help coaches and athletic trainers make better decisions on how to treat certain athletes on the field. For today's Health Minute, I'm Susan Hendricks.
Not bad today at all weather-wise, but with just a few days left until the official start of fall, what can we expect the rest of the week? Danny Taborn joins us now to let us know. Danny?
Well, it looks like you might need to keep your umbrella handy, Mitch. As a chance for rain continues over the next couple of days, I'll have your complete forecast right after this.
When the New York